So I was volunteering at the election in Sweden, counting votes until 1:30 in the morning. And I heard one voter come up to me and said, I did my duty and I voted. And I'm like, that's great. Good job. And he was like, I think everyone needs to vote. I think it should be illegal not to vote. And I said, okay, that's an interesting opinion because I am legally obliged to not express any political opinions. But what I really thought, which I can say now that I'm off my duty, was that when you move towards force and rules and laws, you move towards external motivation instead of intrinsic motivation. So what ends up happening is we do things not because we want to, but because the government tells us to do it. And that's something we need to be very careful with. We saw during the COVID times that when governments took more aggressive mandates on COVID and did more to force certain rules and practices, an unfortunate outcome of that was that people were less intrinsically motivated to take action to prevent the spread of COVID. Instead, they did it because the government told them to do it. And they only did what the government told them to do. And if the government hadn't made a mandate on something, that meant it was free to do whatever you wanted to. Essentially, people started looking for what we in Dutch call the randjes van de regels, the limits of the rules and boundaries. So often it's very important to be careful with these things. In Sweden, there was a different decision. Instead of the government making rules about what should happen, the government authorities responsible for managing pandemics gave general advice to the people in Sweden. And what ended up happening was the Swedish people did what they thought was the best course of action. The Swedish people thought and made decisions for themselves about what they thought should be done. And they acted based on intrinsic motivation. And their outcome was, in practice, almost the same. People kept their distance, people washed their hands, people did various things that they thought were reasonable and feasible to expect to ensure that they didn't spread disease, right? Like staying home if you felt a bit sick. And this is really a good model for any company, any country that's looking for how to increase civic participation. If you want a country where people are involved in organizations and in decisions and in outcomes, if you want a place, a company where your employees take initiative, participate in discussions, and are involved in what happens in the world, you want a push towards intrinsic motivation. Here, what you're trying to do is foster mutual interest, create a space or sphere of enjoyment, of mutual enjoyment of an activity, and help people move towards inherent satisfaction. Set your own goals, decide the best way to achieve it, and work towards what it is that you feel is the best thing to do. That's the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Thank you so much for watching and see you all in the next video.